As an introverted people pleaser, I'm often finding myself trapped in the chatter that fills my mind. On the introverted side of things, I'm always overthinking, thinking about my situation, whether it's my experiences, my lifestyle choices, my relationships. And on the people pleasing side, it's the validation I seek that I feel like most people pleasers do. It's the validation of this idea of myself, this vision of myself that I'd like to be, right? That noble person. The person who's always looking out for other people, who's making other people happy, who's keeping things fair. And regardless of whether it came from something that happened in your family or wherever the heck that people-pleasing need came from, if you're a people pleaser watching this, generally speaking, as human beings, we all care to some degree about what people think of us. And for a long time, I was so trapped in this pull between these two worlds. I couldn't be myself. And I couldn't do the things I wanted to do. I couldn't be the person I wanted to be. And I kind of felt like I was like drowning a little bit until I didn't. And so today's video, I want to talk to you guys about why I stopped caring and how I stopped caring. But before we get into the video, I just want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Bridget. On this channel, I talk a lot about introverted things. I talk about my social anxiety, general anxiety. I talk about the books I'm reading. And so if any of that interests you, make sure to check out some of my other videos as well. So with that being said, let's get into the video. Before we get into the why and the how, I feel like it's important to kind of understand more about why we feel this need. Why do we care so much? And I think what it all comes down to is that primitive nature that we all still have. When we were hunters and gatherers, that survival instinct was being in packs, right? In order to survive from starvation, from the cold, from war, from whatever it was, we needed to be in groups, right? So we needed to be liked by other people, otherwise we would be outed, and therefore we would die, right? So that survival nature is still within all of us. And so this can easily explain why our sense of well-being has a lot to do with other people's influence. And this can also explain why physical pain is very closely linked to social rejection. Now, we may not have that fear of dying anymore of starvation or the cold or war, but today we suffer that anxiety with strangers that we meet online, strangers that we see on the street, our friends, our relationships, with everything. And it could be as simple as saying something stupid in a crowd of your friends and thinking twice, 3 times about the story you're about to post on Instagram. It's something that all of us deal with. For me, and maybe some of you can relate to this, those of you that are also people pleasers, it was my dad who literally did not care about anything. He could do anything and not think twice about it. My mom, on the other hand, was so obsessed with what people thought of her. And I think that kind of rubbed off on me a little bit as well. But on top of that, it was the fact that my mom, although she cared about how she looked, she didn't really care about other people's feelings. So I think I kind of wanted to justify or rectify all of that by making sure that things were fair, that I wasn't mean to people, in fact, that I was extra kind to people. And I also thought about how I looked, how I presented myself. So it was a culmination of all of these things that kind of really created who I was. And it was almost this cycle of, because I was doing good and I was getting validated, it made me want to do more and more and more. And that's how people saw me. And that's how I saw myself. So I kept doing the same things over and over and over again, right? I kept pleasing because it became my identity. And it was something that I really felt was such a part of me that if I stopped doing these things, that I wouldn't be myself anymore. And then that would be like, well, who the heck am I if I'm not all of these things? If I'm not the nice person, if I'm not the person you could go to when you needed a favor or if you needed advice, who would I be? And so I kept myself in this cycle. The one thing I found was that the relationships I kept really kept me in that cycle. And so I think that was the first big thing I started to realize. When I first started college, I had a whole new group of friends, but I kind of kept with those tendencies of seeking out that really strong person as far as making friends go, and then, just branching off with that person. It was never really about me, it was always kind of about that person. And I did that all throughout college. But I kind of started to see how that was sort of an issue because I wasn't doing things for me. I was making sure that everyone else had all the things that they needed to be fulfilled first, right? Starting out with that friendship. And then in my family relationships, my intimate relationships, it was not about doing things for myself or making time for myself. It was just how much can I get done to, fulfill all my requirements in these relationships. And then after college, things were a little bit different. It was like, honestly, the peak of COVID. I moved in with my husband's family at the time, and that's when I really started to take a good look at my life and really just take some time for myself. Then when we moved to Florida 2 years ago, a whole new group of friends. Tough finding these friends, but that's something that's always been the case for me. And I kind of started to see that, in the new relationships that I was creating, there was a lot of commonalities. I started to really go towards, as far as female friendships go, these like strong, independent, really had their shit together kind of women. I was like, I want that. That is what I want. I want to be like, I want to know myself. I want to be so in tune with who I am, who I want to be, how I want to portray myself. And I just felt like these women are so confident and I want to embody that. It was that confidence and that knowing of who you really are that I really admired and I was really trying to search for. And I realized that, wow, like it makes a huge difference when you surround yourself with completely different types of people. You can stay stuck in that cycle, or you can find new people who you admire, who you look up to, and you start emulating their behavior as well. Maybe I was like listening to a podcast or reading a book. This probably happened like 2 years ago. But they're basically saying, like, no one cares. Nobody cares. We get so caught up in how we're perceived, how we look, how we sound, how we act, the choices that we make, the things that we post, and we get so caught up in it. And at the end of the day, like, no one cares. No one is looking into such small decisions that you're making on a daily basis, right? If someone was looking at your life the way you look at your life and the way you look at your decisions, it's borderline psychopath. Nobody does that unless you're a creepy stalker. And so when I started to really put all that together, I was like, why the heck did it take me, like 25 years of my life to finally figure out that nobody gives a fuck? And after I had that epiphany, I started to see it everywhere. I started to hear it in more books, in more conversations, in more podcasts, in more like everyday walks of life scenarios where I'm running into an old friend or whatever. I started to see it happen more and more and more, and it really validated that epiphany and that realization that I had. And there's actually a word for it, because this happens to me a lot. Like I see a new idea or I hear a new word and I just can't stop seeing it. It's called frequency illusion. It's when you learn a new word or learn a new idea and you keep seeing it happen in your everyday life. And this was exactly what was happening with that epiphany I had, that nobody cares. And when I took that mindset, so many things started to change. I started to really look at my decisions that I would always start to question, right? So just to give you an example, say if a friend asked me, I don't know, to help her do something at her house later, or if they asked to go grab dinner later. Old me either would have said yes right away, or would have said yes and then canceled later on, or would have said, I'll get back to you, and then never get back to them. Or would have said no and said, but this is why I can't. New me took a look at that and said, slow down. Why are you trying to come up with excuses? Why are you trying to lie? Why are you trying to justify why you can't go or why you simply don't want to go? Just be honest. Say, hey, I'm tired. I really just don't feel like going. Or just a simple no and leave it at that. Why do I care how I'm perceived? And that going back to a relationships thing is what I really admired about these people that I was meeting, these new relationships I was getting into. They said no without giving a justification. They said no because they were tired. They were honest. They held their ground when they made a decision. The more I really started to question all of those tiny decisions that I used to take a long time to think about. And what I started to do was just say no more and not think about it. Another example of this is when I'm out in public and I'm really overanalyzing the way I'm moving my body, what I'm wearing, who I'm going to see, what kind of conversations I'm having. If I mess up, if I trip, if I, do these stupid things, it's like every time I did it and I thought about what my previous reaction would have been, I switched it and I said, whatever, nobody cares. Or I just blew it off and just kept walking. Right? So it was these little changes that I started to make that I feel like, although they seem so small, have made a huge impact in just the way that I carry myself and the way I spend so much less time thinking about things that I really don't need to think about and caring about things that I don't need to care about. The last thing I want to leave you guys with is something that's hard, but it's a super valuable and important piece of information. Expect and accept that people will have opinions of you. It was a hard pill to swallow as a people pleaser. I really wanted everyone to like me. But in reality, the more people you meet, the more interactions you have, the more opinions you make about certain things, you're going to inevitably run into people who don't agree with you, who don't like what you have to say, who just don't like you as a person, and that's okay. We are not meant to be liked by everybody. We're in an age where, we're no longer in just a tiny little pact. We travel. We have the internet. We have social media. We're being surrounded by so many more people. We're being broadcasted to so many more people. We're communicating with so many more people. It's inevitable. And so we have to accept that some people just aren't going to like us. Some people are going to have strong opinions about us, actually, and that's okay. And I feel like I'm finally at a place where I am okay with that because it's the truth. And if someone doesn't like me, that means I'm not doing something right. Right? Isn't the saying like all bad publicity is good publicity or whatever the heck it is? You get the point, okay? People will have their opinions and that has nothing to do with who you are as a person. So that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Watch this again and again and again until you really start to hopefully see some things in a different way. And hopefully you'll get a chance to take a look at your decisions that you're making, the thoughts that you're having on a daily basis, and come to the conclusion that nobody cares. If that's all you get from today's video, then I'm okay with that. Thank you guys for watching today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, found it useful as always, and I will see you next time.